aspirants, welcome back to another learning video. Before I begin with today's video, here is an important note for you. To join our UPSC Optional English Literature classes, you may call us at 88-650-288-65 or log on to finlandacademy.com for any information related to our course program. Now in my today's video, I'm going to talk about this important poet that is prescribed in our syllabi. If we look at section A, we have this important metaphysical poet prescribed in our syllabi. Without any doubt, when I use the word metaphysical, I mean John Donne. Johndonne, John Donne. Now let's understand the word metaphysical altogether. Now this word metaphysical is basically divided into two parts. Meta plus physical. So meta plus physical is equals to metaphysical. Now meta basically refers to something that is beyond our five senses. That is beyond our physical existence. That is beyond our physical understanding. That is beyond our physical experiences. Now it also explains how mind and matter are interlinked. It also explains how our physical existence on this earth is connected to something that is beyond our material reality on the plane that we are presently living in. Now coming back to our syllabi, we have 5 poems by John Donne. The first one is called Canonization, wherein Donne says, "For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh, or child my palsy or my gout. My 5 grey hairs a ruined fortune flood." The second poem by Donne is called Death Be Not Proud, wherein Donne says, he begins the poem like this, he says, "Death be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so." The third poem by Donne is called The Good Morrow. Donne opens this poem with a lot of love in his heart for his beloved. He says, "I wonder by my troth, what thou and I did till we laughed. Were we not weaned till then, but sucked on country pleasures childishly?" The fourth poem is called On His Mistress Going to Bed. And the fifth one is called Relic, wherein he says, "When my grave is broke up again, some second guest to entertain." So these are our 5 poems by John Donne. 1, we have Canonization. 2, we have Death Be Not Proud. 3, we have The Good Morrow. 4, we have On His Mistress Going to Bed. And 5, we have The Relic. Before we begin understanding these poems, let's first of all understand John Donne as a metaphysical poet.
We already looked at it, how the word meta means anything that is beyond, and physical means physical nature. So anything that is beyond physical nature is equals to metaphysical. Okay? Now metaphysical poetry means poetry that goes beyond the physical world of the senses and tries to explore the spiritual world. Metaphysical poetry makes wide use of conceits, imaginative images, and usually presents a combination of intense emotion and mental feelings, right? Apart from this, if we try look at the chief characteristics of metaphysical poetry, number 1, we understand that one quality of metaphysical poetry is its dramatic manner and direct tone of speech. Okay? Number 2, metaphysical poetry is highly intellectual and analytical in nature. Number 3, metaphysical poets desired to say something that had never been said before. Number 4, metaphysical poetry we see abounds in far-fetched similes and metaphors, which are commonly called conceits. Conceits, conceits. Now what are conceits? Conceit basically is an elaborate, extended and startling comparison between two dissimilar things. Okay, a conceit basically it's a brief metaphor but usually it forms the framework of an entire poem altogether. In English literature, we have two basic kinds of conceits. One is called Petrarchan conceit, and another is called metaphysical conceit, which is in our syllabi. Petrarchan conceit basically is a type of conceit which is imitated from the love poems of the Italian poet Petrarch. Herein you see the subject of the poem is compared to some random object, maybe a rose, a garden, a house, or anything like that. But in the metaphysical conceit, you see there's a comparison which is very complex, startling, and highly intellectual. Of course, it's dissimilar out there as well. So we see metaphysical conceit is a characteristic of the 17th century poet John Donne, and then of course his subsequent followers. We find several conceits in his beautiful poem, The Good Morrow, which is also prescribed in your syllabi. Right. Now, apart from that, coming to another point number 5, the metaphysical poetry abounds in the fusion of passionate feeling and logical argument. So there is passion, there is feeling, but then we also say there is logic, there is reason. So it's a fusion of both the elements, that is passionate feelings plus logical arguments. Right? Now, apart from this, point number 6, the metaphysical poets were men of learning. So the poetry, you see, reveals scholarship of its authors. Number 7, we see that the craze for writing something new, strange, and startling often led to metaphysicals to absurdities. Yeah, so that there is a lot of, obscurity, that there is a lot of vagueness, there is a lot of absurdities in their poems. And this is why, which brings me to my next point number 7, we see that it is extremely difficult to understand the metaphysical poetry because of its high vagueness and obscure nature, and of course the absurdities that I just spoke about. Now that we are done understanding the term metaphysical, we now try to look at John Donne as a metaphysical poet. We'll try to understand the elements of John Donne's poetry now. John Donne, first of all, is a head above shoulders among the poets who were labeled as metaphysicals, first by John Dryden and then later by Dr. Johnson. If we try to look at the elements of John Donne's poetry, firstly, Donne's poetry, both love and divine, is marked by unified sensibility. We see that the metaphysical poetry of Donne is a blend of passion and argument, feeling and logic. So passion and argument, feeling and logic, those are the key words for you. That's John Donne for us. Donne, we see, has a mechanism of sensibility which can literally devour any kind of experience. He connects the abstract with the concrete, the physical with the spiritual, the remote with the near, and the sublime with the commonplace. That is John Donne for us. You see, in his poetry, contraries meet, and every lyric arises out of some emotional situation, but the emotion is both expressed and analyzed. That's the thing about Donne's poetry. So you see, in Donne's metaphysical poetry, passion and reason go hand in hand. Fourthly, Donne, we see, is extremely fond of logical sequences and analysis. He often states unsupportable propositions, and then you see he's also able to prove them merely by virtue of his arguments and logics. Finally, we see that Donne's poetry is dramatic in form. His poetry is also called a drama of ideas. We see emotions, we see feelings, we see experiences, we see incidents, we see all these things in combination, and how they are eventually presented in a dramatic manner. So his poems are dramatic monologues in that way, in which you see a speaker ventilates himself like an actor on the stage. So we see how, as a poet of love, John Donne occupies a place of distinction. He was an innovator in his treatment and presentation of love. He revolted literally against the easy, fluent style, stock imageries, and courtly conventions of his time. He introduced reality of thought and vividness of expression. We see that his love poems are marked by intense and subtle analysis of all the moods of a lover in a startling language that was unthinkable in his day. For example, you have this beautiful poem in your syllabus by the Good Morrow, which again is a love poem. And you see that in this poem, Donne celebrates the success of a lover. He speaks of different stages in the fulfillment of a lover's endeavor. He talks about these stages as preparation, attainment, and aftermath. From the emotional point of view, we may call them surprise, satisfaction, and spirituality. We see how Donne is concerned with the representation and figuring the outside abnormal reality we humans are living in. Donne bravely disregarded all the conventional principles, all the set standardized principles, and set out on a mission to create tradition which would eventually find its disciples almost 3 centuries after his death. Donne thought that being true to what one feels is of critical importance for every poet. If to depict an absolute love takes conceits, abstract ideas, and soaring imagination, he did not hesitate to employ them as long as it helped him convey his feelings and emotions. I'll leave you here. Thank you so much for joining me. Please stay safe and fine. Take care. We'll meet you soon in our next video.